Here we go.
Okay, I think we're live. Hey everybody. Welcome to Tailscale. Of course, I started too early. Hey everybody. Welcome to Tailscale Ask an Expert. It's been a little while since I've been on this live stream, so I'm gonna have to get back into the swing of things. Alex, who usually hosts and has co-hosted with me quite a bit, is taking a well-earned break. So today you have me, Lee, from the Solutions Engineering team, and Raj, who is joining us for the first time. Raj, I'd love you to introduce yourself to all of the viewers at home.
Sure. Hey, I'm Raj. I'm a customer success engineer. I've written a couple of pretty cool community projects around like visualizing traffic flow and contributed to a couple areas in our Go client. So really excited to help out.
Indeed. So the format of this, if you are joining for the first time, is you ask us your questions. This webinar doesn't work without questions. So if you have anything that's on your mind, if you have anything that you want to talk about, or maybe questions about how to implement things, Raj and I will do our best to answer those questions. This is not pre-prepared. We don't have the questions preceded. This is just us trying to answer questions. So we can't always guarantee that we know the answer offhand. We will do our best. So yeah, I'm hopeful that we'll get some questions in YouTube and in the chat. Until then, Raj and I will ad lib a little bit. So Raj, one of the questions that we had pre-prepared was, what's your favorite use of Tailscale in the wild? I know what mine is, and I know you work with some customers, so I'd love to hear your perspective on some ways that you've seen Tailscale used with the customers that you're working with.
Yeah, I would say the most exciting feature that I really enjoy is the app connector portion.
Yeah.
Just being able to funnel traffic that's like destined for outbound internet, but through your internal network is really exciting for customers.
Yeah, we see the app connector all the time when you're trying to kind of protect your intellectual property. So, in this AI-driven world, for better or worse, a lot of intellectual property is data, and you want to make sure that you don't provide access to it and kind of like have it out on the public internet. So people are using app connectors to provide a specific egress point from your network into those kind of cloud services like Salesforce. We've seen people use it for MongoDB. Any other things that you can think of, Raj, where people are, protecting assets with app connectors? Salesforce and MongoDB is the one that comes to mind.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it for, even things like Google Apps or GitHub, where you want to kind
GitHub,
of
that's a good one. Yeah,
restrict the access, the IP access that those apps can log in from. So, yeah.
indeed. Okay, we got a couple of questions. Oh, I should probably tell mine as well, actually. There's been a couple of use cases, and obviously we've got to be careful about what things we share. But we have seen Tailscale in space. Like a customer has put Tailscale in low orbit in space, which was a very exciting moment for us. We've seen Tailscale in submarines, which I think was a pretty exciting use case for us, which kind of meets all those frontiers. We've seen Tailscale in the Antarctic, which I thought was pretty cool as well. There was a customer recently who put Tailscale on like fishing boats in remote parts of the Northern Arctic and like fishing boats. So like I think one of the things that really excites me, especially as we kind of grow into this IoT type use case, is just how ubiquitous you can make the product and put it on all these kind of random things in different frontiers. Farms, that was another one. There was a really great use case where somebody was building like farming equipment, and obviously it would be really expensive for them to fly people to remote farms in the Midwest in the US to fix something. And so they put Tailscale with a cellular modem on there, and they can do a lot of remote debugging and stuff like that. So it's a great question. We love those kind of like use case questions as well. But the questions are coming in thick and fast. So let's get cracking. Raj, you want to pick one from the question bank and we'll go from there?
Yeah, sure. I
Or I
see.
can, while you pull that up, I can kind of grab one of these. So there's a question here of what features are upcoming on Tailscale. Now, there are limits on what we can talk about. There are private alphas and private betas, or betas and public betas and all that kind of stuff. And our product team would not be very happy with us if we started giving the game away on some of the things we're building. But there are some exciting features coming to Tailscale Serve without giving specific information about what that is. I know, Raj, you've looked at some of those things for Tailscale Serve, specifically on the Kubernetes space. I wouldn't go into detail, but maybe like a high level idea of what it will give you the ability to do would be great.
Yeah, sure. So this kind of gives you the ability to have multiple, in this case, Kubernetes clusters, kind of like advertising their own, endpoint onto the tailnet. And this will allow you to bring high availability services and, kind of have some pretty cool routing scenarios that you can bring within your clusters and aid into like a multi-cluster type scenario. So, and
Yeah,
that's
it's
just
really,
in the
really
Kubernetes
exciting.
space.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm so excited about by this particular feature is as we start to build it, like the potential for what we can do is just really kind of exceptional, right? There's
Huge.
a lot of use cases that we're kind of seeing, like, oh, this is going to be really awesome. So big changes coming to Tailscale Serve, or like exciting changes coming to Tailscale Serve. The other one that comes to mind is next month. We have GitHub Universe, and GitHub Universe is obviously the big GitHub conference. We have some exciting changes coming to our identity model related to that. I'm not going to go into any detail. If you are familiar with GitHub's identity model, you probably can paint a picture of what that looks like. I will be at GitHub Universe on stage, which I'm very excited about, to talk a little bit about this. So if you are planning on attending, looking forward to seeing you there. But that's a really exciting feature that's coming as well. Um, yeah, I think that's probably two pretty good pieces of information that we're probably going to get into trouble with on products. But I think that's two pretty exciting things to talk about.
Yeah, I'm really excited about some of the CI/CD use cases, being able to
Yeah.
like you leverage GitHub to kind of access your tailnet and make infrastructure type changes in an action. Those things are going to be really cool.
Yeah, I mean,
Excited to see what's
you're gonna this is one of my pet favorite projects right now, so I'm gonna go into this a little bit. Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing is that in organizations that have already got an established VPN, which we find is broadly very unpopular in the organization, nobody really loves their current remote access solution, and so what we're seeing is because people want to provide new use cases specifically for engineering teams, they are like introducing Tailscale specifically for a CI/CD use case. So if you are running database migrations and you're doing that manually from a developer laptop right now, or if you are accessing internal services within your CI/CD workflow and you need to do things like Terraform access to a MySQL database, that's really hard to do with a managed GitHub runner. You have to use something like an SSH Bastion or something like that. Tailscale eliminates all of that pain and problem statement. So we're seeing a lot of customers right now adopting Tailscale purely for that particular use case. So that's a really great call out, Raj. Excellent. So Raj, you want to pick a random question and we'll go
Yeah,
from
yeah.
there?
Sure. This is a great one, Lee. What is the right way to have most machines using global DNS setting and just define hosts to have different DNS server slash services? So I think they're kind of asking, why would you use a global name server? And then, can you statically define things in Magic DNS? And maybe we can touch on split DNS.
Yeah. So I think that one of the complexities around this is there is no right way, right? Like there is no canonical right way to do these things, simply because of what everybody has different needs in DNS. Some people need to resolve internal things. Some people don't care about that. There is no canonical right way to do this. I think one of the things that we've tried to do, and it's actually a little bit outside of Tailscale's core product philosophy of just make it work. We've actually provided a lot of flexibility when it comes to DNS. We've given you a lot of options. So you can define name servers within the admin console that will allow you to have an internal name server, or you can override all DNS when you enable a Tailscale client with a little checkbox that says, override DNS. but I don't think there is necessarily a right way. What I think you should be focused on is, do you only want to resolve DNS records on the VPN or off the VPN? Because there's a perfectly valid set of use cases where you have DNS records that are on a public name server that resolves to a private IP address. That generally reduces a lot of complexity, right? Like if you're willing for things to for DNS resolution to work pretty much globally, but it only resolves to a private IP address, things will generally work pretty fine, and you don't need to do any split DNS stuff. However, if you want to have a DNS server that's only available inside your network, and then that only resolves to a set of private addresses, and it's kind of a private name server, that's where a lot of complexity comes in. I don't know how you have seen things work when you work with customers, Raj, but that's been my experience so far.
Yeah. So from what I've seen is generally people set the global DNS server is if they kind of want to control, the way they're resolving DNS more broadly for any of the users connected on Tailscale. But what the really great feature is, and the reason why you probably won't even have to set this at a global level is with split DNS, because now you can say, hey, I have a couple DNS servers that maybe are hosted on the tailnet or advertised via a subnet router or something like that. And you can kind of specify certain, paths for Magic DNS, or I guess Tailscale DNS, to kind of take you down.
Yeah.
And that's generally a safer way of handling things in a broad
Yeah,
sense.
and to answer the question right, you want to define hosts for different services. You're going to have to run a DNS server. There's no feature right now in Tailscale that will allow you to add a random host name unless you install Tailscale on the client. And one of my little pet peeves, I guess, is when people call the DNS resolution in Tailscale Magic DNS. That's
Yeah.
not what Magic DNS is. Tailscale has a DNS server, but Magic DNS is the registering of Tailscale clients in that DNS server, right? And if you use Tailscale Serve, you can basically register some internal service, like an internal web proxy or something like that. That will become part of the DNS resolution in the DNS implementation for Tailscale. So a very broad answer to that. I think people are probably understandably looking for like a canonical answer. Sadly, there isn't one. But you're probably gonna have to run an internal name server. Core DNS is pretty easy and pretty approachable. If you're old school like me, you'll run Bind or something along those lines, or even Power DNS. That was one of the ones that I used to run that had a database backing it, which was scary. But okay, there's a couple of related questions here that I'm going to kind of bring up at the same time. One is, hello, can we have Wake on LAN support from admin console to Wake devices? Thanks. And then secondly, the similar question is, Tailscale SSH works at which level of OSI? Anything for layer two? I'm happy to, if you want to take a stab at this, Raj, or I'm happy to answer it. It's up to you.
Why don't you answer this question? I think
Yeah.
you may be able to get this better than me.
Yes, absolutely. So, first of all, Tailscale is not and will likely never work at layer two. It's a layer three, layer three technology and routes packets over layer three. So, Wake on LAN is a layer two technology, right? So we send a packet over layer two to your local device, which wakes up your machine, and then it boots, and then it gets an IP address, which is over layer three. We do not have any plans to change that functionality, and we certainly will not have plans to put it in the admin console. So if you want to achieve that functionality, your best bet is to put a device on the network inside your layer two, inside a VLAN or something along those lines. Or if you're at home, you probably don't have VLANs, but if you are a home user that has complex network equipment like I do, you can VLAN off your network and stuff like that. But put a device in that particular network that has Tailscale installed on it, and then you can connect to that device, send a Wake on LAN packet to the local network, right? Um, on the Tailscale SSH part, the SSH is a layer four protocol, I believe. God, I need to look that up. I should probably know that.
Mhm.
But again, when we have no plans to change any of the way that Tailscale works into layer two, and it would be a fundamental change to the technology. We would like have to completely redesign it and revamp it from the ground up for it to work at layer two. So I don't really see that happening. I don't think there's a lot of value in that for us at this point.
Yeah, and just to take a step back to the Wake on Land, there was a recent blog post we actually released on this, and I think it's using a Raspberry Pi and something called UpSnap to kind of build
Mm.
the Wake on Land feature. So Pretty cool.
Okay. You want to pick a random question?
Yeah, there was
Oh, I have
another
a
one.
question for you. I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Raj mentioned building community projects. How would someone build a community project, and what's a good example of one? Well, you're right in this space, Raj, so I'm going to let you
Sure.
answer this.
Yeah, so are you, Lee. So Lee has built an app called TSCLI. I've built one called TS Flow. And how would you go about doing this? I think we have a forum that you can kind of submit saying, hey, this is my Tailscale project. This is how I use it. And this is the value it kind of brings to a tailnet. Um, I would go ahead and fill that out. And I think maybe would we be able to link this, Lee, out?
Yeah,
In the
I'll be honest, not Raj, you're Raj. Alex is usually the person who's on top of the links and stuff. So
Hmm,
hopefully our trusty producer in the back end here, Kate, can grab the community projects link and share it on YouTube and on the Zoom chat. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And a good example of one. Well, what problem do you have? Like Raj built TS Flow because he needed to be able to visualize network flow logs in a way that was helpful for customers to be able to see them. I built TSCLI because I like to interact with the API over the command line, and there was a lot of jobs that I was performing over and over again that I found would have been easier to do with a CLI tool. The best community project is one that solves a problem that either you are having or you have noticed other people having. And it just gives me an opportunity to shout out our brand new Discord. If you haven't seen it yet, hopefully our trusty producer Kate can share the link to the Discord as well. If you want to hang out in there and see some of the problems people are having, you will have lots and lots of inspiration for stuff that you can build. But any community project is something that solves a problem. Another shout out for a community project that I will be adding and that people are using is something called Proxy T, which is a solution that proxies the Tailscale control plane for adversarial networks. So if you have a network that is DNS blocking tailscale.com or is doing SNI inspection for tailscale.com, you can actually log in to the control plane. You can host your proxy inside your own network or on your own public IP address and then proxy that to the Tailscale network. Please do not use this to get around restrictions on your corporate network. You will get terminated. Like I cannot stress this enough. If you are trying to use Tailscale at work and it is blocked, do not use Tailscale at work. It is not, your IT team will be very unhappy with you. Please do not do that. But if you are in a hotel, or if you're in an airport, or if you are in a place where you need to be able to work and connect to Tailscale without actually, in a public network, Proxy can be really useful for that. Okay, any you want to
very cool.
grab a question from
Yeah.
here, Raj?
This is one that maybe you know better than me, but does the personal plan allow you to have more than 100 devices?
I don't think it does because we add devices based on like the number of users in your telnet.
Hmm.
So one of the things we talked about CI/CD, right? And one of the things that we're starting to see as the CI/CD use case takes off and IoT use cases take off is that our pricing and packaging isn't necessarily tailored very well for those situations. Now, one thing you can do on the Personal Plus plan is pay the $6 a month and add your family members, and you will get 20 new devices for each one of those family members. Probably not what you want to do. On some of our premium and enterprise plans, you can actually add a device for 50 cents per device as well. I expect this to change in the midterm future. I have no timeline on when that will work, when that will happen, but we have identified that this is an area of our pricing that we definitely need to address. And I don't know what the end result of that will be, but we're seeing an increasing set of use cases going away from what we're calling internally a human to machine connectivity into machine to machine connectivity. And our pricing doesn't necessarily address that very well. If you are an enterprise user, we do have custom packaging and put custom pricing for this use case. So don't let that put you off. If you are an organization that is doing a big CI/CD use case, we can definitely do that. But for folks like this user who is on the personal plan, we don't currently have a solution for that yet, but we are working pretty hard on it. So we appreciate that it's not ideal right now.
Hmm. And it does look like the personal plus plan still is capped at the 100 nodes.
Yes. I'm just going to quickly address a question that I see at the top here. We already talked about Proxy T. One other question is, I tried to use Tailscale on a government place guest Wi-Fi, but I was not able to use it. Other networks it worked. Again, you can block Tailscale by DNS blocking tailscale.com because the client has to register with the control plane and go through the identity flow. So if you block tailscale.com, it will block your usage of Tailscale. It will not block your connectivity to other devices in the Tailscale network. So what we've seen people do is you can connect off like a hotspot, log into Tailscale, and then switch networks, and Tailscale still works because it creates a peer connection directly to the other device. But again, don't work around government restrictions if you are going to get in trouble, please. You can also use proxy T, as I already mentioned, to solve that problem. But again, please don't get yourselves in trouble. I don't want to be responsible for people getting getting in trouble with their employer. Okay.
I got a couple more questions for you,
Let's
Lee.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is one that I've ran into. A lot of people I've seen are running Tailscale directly on their router.
Mm.
I know there's a GitHub project around installing it on Unify. There's another one on like OpenWRT, a couple other ones. Um, Maybe we can talk a little bit about, ta running Tailscale on a router. Is that something we
Yes.
should be doing? And then maybe direct connections, or maybe a little bit of NAT traversal type stuff at the end would be
Yeah,
cool.
let's do it. So the two questions are any possibility of official Tailscale support in unified gateways? That's one of the questions. And another is I've been using my router, the Glinet Flint 3, but I'm getting less than 10 megabits a second on every device. But I get more than 300 megabits a second with any other WireGuard VPN. Any sets with troubleshooting this. So let's talk about, first of all, possibility of Tailscale support in Unify. I have a Unify device myself. I am very invested in this being a thing, right? The underlying operating system for a Unify device is basically a Debian-like operating system. So you can install the Tailscale Debian package very, very easily with apt install and installing the package, right? The problem is that Unify devices are essentially a sandbox. And so every single time you provision the Unify device, it resets the operating system to scratch. Now, there is a part of the Unify device's hardware that has persistent storage. So there are community scripts that will install Tailscale and move the actual Tailscale binaries into those parts of the operating system that persist after reboot and persist after reprovisioning. So those things exist. However, that part of the hardware is very, very low power. And so you have to run Tailscale in like user space mode in a particular way of doing things, which is not ideal. This is a hardware limitation, right? Like Tailscale will work absolutely fine in these situations. If you are a Unify employee that is a Tailscale user, or if you have connections with Unify, we would love to talk to people on the Unify side to make this an actual thing. We have a partnerships team who's very invested in this. We have had some conversations with Unify, but I would love to see this improve. And so we need help from Unify to make this work. The second question is around Glinet Flint. I also have one of those, which I use as my travel router. And I also noticed the same thing. Again, it's a hardware limitation. So Tailscale, the WireGuard VPN that's built into the GLI net is actually a kernel like implementation of WireGuard. So it uses the kernel offloading and is very, very performant because it uses the kernel space. Tailscale uses WireGuard Go, which is not a kernel implementation of WireGuard. We do use a ton device, so we actually get a hardware like NIC on the operating system. Well, not a hardware NIC, but you get the idea. We get a NIC on the operating system that means that we can do very, very high performance, but it is not the kernel module that we use with WireGuard. It's WireGuard Go, which is technically in the operating system user space. And it can get a bit confusing because there's operating system user space and there's Tailscale user space, so there's a whole bunch of other things.
Right.
My understanding is that Glynet has no intent of improving the performance of Tailscale on their hardware right now. Unfortunately. Now, if you're getting 10 megabits per second on every other device, it may be that you are getting relayed, but my experience has generally been that the hardware and the way that we package up Tailscale means that you aren't going to get much better speeds, unfortunately. Again, we would love to talk to the hardware manufacturers to make this better.
So Lee, can you talk to me, why would you install Tailscale on your router? Why not install it, as a subnet router somewhere else, maybe in the local LAN?
Well, I think there's two reasons. The first is your router probably has a public IP address attached to it, and so therefore you are not going to do any NAT traversal from behind the router, right? So, like,
Mhm.
from a direct connections perspective, you're more than likely going to get direct connections to a router. The second is that it's usually pretty low powered, right? Like, it's a low
Right.
powered device that can run Tailscale. You can run a Raspberry Pi and it's relatively low power, but your router's probably already turned on, so that's super useful. The third thing is that it's the thing that does the actual DHCP and like layer three routing
Mhm.
for you. So putting Tailscale right there is usually pretty preferred. And then finally, it means that you don't have to think about all of the devices behind it being able to be on Tailscale. So, I have a Roku TV, right? And I want to be able to
Right.
use that Roku TV on Tailscale. I can't install Tailscale on the Roku TV, although it's technically possible, but not easily. You can't I want to be able to use that Roku TV's apps with my Tailscale client and being able to connect to certain things. So it being on the router means that anything behind that automatically gets into the Tailscale network. So those are the three, four main reasons that you would
Mhm.
probably do that. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary with all these things. I always hate it always feels like a bit of a cop out to me to say talk to the manufacturer, but there is only so much we can do, right? Like there's limitations on what we're capable of achieving. Okay. Lots of great questions, by the way.
Yeah.
Do you want
We can
to?
answer this Proxmox one. So we
Uh,
have a question here. Would it be better to use a Proxmox server directly as an exit node instead of my router?
um, this is honestly, I think, up to you question, right?
Right.
If you install Tailscale on an LXC underneath the Proxmox hardware, it's going to have multiple layers of NAT traversal, right? So you're going to have to do a bunch
Hmm.
of port forwarding and all that kind of stuff, right? You can run it directly on the Proxmox server, which is totally fine. It's a Linux-based operating system, and that would totally work. You may not want to mess with your networking stack for the VMs, but it's usually pretty fine, and I've seen people do that. Um, Honestly, both of these things will work. Whichever
Yeah,
is best for you. I think that's probably the right answer here. I'm going to ask you a question, Raj.
sure.
Is there a way to make an access rule where a device with a certain tag can't access any other devices in the network, but other devices can access said device? So, like, I think they're just trying to jail a particular
Sure.
device with ACLs here. Is what the way I'm reading this, at least.
Yeah, so you'll notice like when you build your tailnet, we kind of include by default a like wildcard, except all connections from here to there are kind of already present. Um, so the way to like what the way I would do it, and the way I've seen other customers do this is essentially, obviously removing that ACL wildcard, allow all traffic, and defining specific grants, source and destination tags, and identities, to kind of say, hey, these sets of identities are allowed to touch these sets, and then if you didn't actually define a grant rule for a connection you don't want to happen, um, that traffic would not actually be allowed to happen. The other really cool thing is we in our ACLs we have tests, so you can actually write test cases as if you're kind of like a programmer, right? And you're saying, hey, can these sets of identities um, reach these as set of identities theoretically in terms of like saying like tags or IPs, and then you can even say either accept rules or deny rules. So those are some really cool test cases that I've seen, and I kind of recommend to almost everybody.
Yeah, and I think the key thing here is that we explicitly do not have a deny rule, right? Which
Hmm.
which philosophically I disagree with, but I am not our product team, and so therefore it is not there yet. I would really like deny rules, but we don't have them right now. So anyway, anything on the roadmap for content-based filtering to use specific exit nodes? I think this is kind of DLP. I'm trying to kind of interpret the question. What do you think?
Yeah, that does sound like DLP type layer 7 traffic. Tailscale
Yes.
kind of just runs on layer 3, and we haven't really explored that to my knowledge so far.
Well, we get a lot of questions about this, right? So
Right.
like the next and on the solutions engineering side, we get a lot of questions about this. So the next iteration of okay, I've got remote connectivity and I can get into
Hmm.
all of those things is okay, how do I know that my employees aren't stealing my customers' data, my customer data, or like exfiltrating important trade secrets from my network? And the way to do that with most security tools is to use some sort of DLP, DPI, deep packet inspection tool
Hmm.
that will generate a TLS certificate, and then you distribute the root certificate to all of your employees' laptops, and then you inspect every single TLS packet that goes out through your network, right? If you have any familiarity with Tailscale's technology, we don't use TLS at all. There's no TLS in the product stack. We just don't. We use WireGuard. We use WireGuard keys. There's no TLS at all in our product stack. And so a
Hmm.
lot of the times the question is, can you do DLP? And the answer for us is kind of flat out no, right? Because and DLP, by the way, is data loss prevention. In case anyone is not familiar with the acronym, we can't do that from the get go. However, just because we can't do it in our product doesn't mean it's not possible. And there are
Right.
three different things that I think are worth talking about when it comes to DLP. The first is network flow logs, right? So network flow logs, and Raj built an incredible tool that allows you to visualize these network flow logs and will show you which devices are communicating which ones. The network flow logs will tell you the amount of data that is passing between two devices. It will not tell you the content of that data because it's encrypted, as you would fully expect it to be. But it will tell you the amount of data that is going between two devices. So if you have a data exfiltration event with large amounts of data leaving your network, you can visualize that with network flow logs, and that would be a good forensic tool for you to be able to say, this employee sent 200 terabytes of data to a random
Right.
server in a random country. We should probably look and investigate that, right? It's not going to tell you the content of that data, but it is going to tell you, it's going to give you a signal to do some investigation. The second thing is if you want to kind of block certain websites and like have a more corporate policy type DLP solution where you're like, don't let people go to random file sharing websites, or don't let people,
Hmm.
connect to, random BitTorrent trackers and stuff like that. We have a DNS integration with both NextDNS and Control-D, which work incredibly well with Tailscale. I actually use it with my 13-year-old stepson and use it to stop him visiting random websites. So that's a really effective solution. It's DNS based blocking, and there are limitations to DNS based blocking, but it does work, right? So that's another thing. And you can use MDM policies to mandate that Tailscale is installed, and then mandate the DNS server so that they can't turn it off and go and use a final thing. The
Yep.
final thing that we talk about a lot is if you mandate exit nodes for a particular Tailscale network. So you're going to use an MDM and say you must use an exit node. And then at that exit node, you use some sort of reverse proxy. So you would handle like egress proxy. So you would handle the TLS side of things. That works great. We have customers
Hmm.
doing that all the time. I built a little proof of concept tool, which will kind of allow you to register an exit node using our TSNet Go library, which will also do the actual TLS inspection as well, which works great as well. So it is possible to achieve this kind of like DLP-like solution with Tailscale as your underlying connectivity technology. We don't have it built in. That may change in the future. This is a common request that come from customers, and we are actively investigating what that would look like. If you are interested in DLP, and if this is the thing that is stopping you adopting Tailscale, we want to hear from you. Please, like send us an email, sales@tailscale.com or se@tailscale.com, or you can email me directly, lee@tailscale.com, saying, hey, I would roll this out to my entire company right now if you could do some sort of DLP. This is the sort of thing our product team wants to hear. Our roadmap is influenced by our customers and users. So if that's something that you really care about, let's get in touch. Long answer, but lots of good stuff there. Okay, I'm going to pick a random question for you, Raj. We are running out of questions.
We need more questions.
We need more questions, folks. Come on, just random questions about what we do on what's my favorite sports team is a good question. Um, we've already answered that one. Anything on the roadmap? We've answered that one.
Well, you were touching on logs, right? We do
Yes.
have some stuff on roadmap for logs too. So like right now, our logs kind of just give an output of, what IP addresses are reaching other IP addresses within your tailnet. But now I think we'll be able to even like kind of scope it down and give you more information on, what Tailscale client is part of that log. So that is, something to also look out for in the future.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that actually. Like, it's funny because I always feel like I've got a handle on the new stuff coming up, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So
Right.
it's really awesome. Okay, we got a good question that came in. I've got two nodes as DNS resolvers on my tailnet. It seems like they don't fail over. When one of them goes offline, my other nodes don't have DNS, although the other DNS node works. Any tips?
I see.
So this is almost certainly, so I'm assuming that you're adding two DNS resolvers into the Tailscale admin console, I
Mhm.
guess, right?
That's my
Um,
guess.
in theory, this should not be a problem. So this sounds like a bug, right? Because although having said that, when you add DNS resolvers to something like resolve.conf and the first DNS resolver doesn't work, if it doesn't return the correct response, it can actually block sometimes. I've noticed that a few times.
Hmm.
Um,
Me too.
I would love to get a bug report for this and a support ticket because what we should be doing is failing over to the second DNS resolver. If that's not happening, that sounds like a bug, and we should probably fix that. If you're just doing it on the local operating system, that's probably outside of Tailscale's scope. But I would love to hear a little bit more about this. So you can generate a bug report. So if you turn off that DNS resolver, um, and there's a command. Do you know what the Tailscale DNS debug command is? Let me
Uh,
just quick.
it's just DNS debug. I think it's Tailscale DNS query, and then is that the command you're looking for here?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. Let me look for it real quick. So there's Tailscale DNS status. Yeah,
Status
okay. So
and query.
Tailscale DNS
Hmm.
status, yeah, which will show you what is configured from from the Tailscale perspective. I don't know if the debug command might be hidden. Let me have a look real quick. Can you hear my keys typing when I do that? Just out of interest, Raj?
Nope.
Okay, good. My microphone is set up correctly. I'm literally doing history grep DNS right now to see if I can find the command. If I find it, I'll post it in the YouTube comments afterwards. But there is a Tailscale DNS status command, which will give you the information about what Tailscale can see from a DNS perspective. And then there is a Tailscale debug command, which is hidden. But if you do Tailscale debug dash dash help, it will actually show you all the different things that you can do and see. And I think in there somewhere, although I can't see it right now, there is like a DNS command that will give you a bunch of information. So yes, I think long story short, this sounds like a bug to me. I don't know about you, Raj, but it sounds like we should be failing over to the one that's online, and we're not doing that, which is definitely a bug.
Right. Yeah, there's Windows clients and Linux clients, and they all kind of handle DNS a little differently. So there may be a little outlying case that hasn't been solved yet.
Indeed. Yeah. Do you have any terms and conditions for media streaming?
Mhm.
No. What you do on your telnet is up to you. It's your network. You're communicating between your devices. There are no terms and conditions on there. Don't get yourselves in trouble, folks. Like, don't be doing silly things and getting yourself in trouble. But, your tailnet is your tailnet. We can't see anything in there. There's no information about the data in there. So yeah, we have no terms and conditions around that. My understanding from reading Reddit and the Discord is lots of people are using Tailscale for connecting to their home network cameras and their Plex servers. It's a very
Mhm.
common use case. Are you an Apple user or are you an Android user, Raj?
I am Apple.
Okay,
Apple.
so I am too, but I just noticed this and I don't want to throw an Apple question at you if you don't want to know the Apple ecosystem. I use my
Yeah,
Apple
yeah.
TV as
Mhm.
an exit node, but sometimes also want to connect to an exit node or a Molpad VPN exit node, but I can't do it both at the same time. Is there a way or upcoming feature to split the in-out traffic to serve both purposes, or is this an Apple limitation? I know the answer to this, but I'm happy if you to have a dig.
Um, I'm assuming you're going to give the app connector as an answer here.
No, I
No.
actually think the problem here, well, the
Mm.
real problem here is right. you can't you what you would be doing if you did that is you'd be chaining exit nodes, right? So like
Right.
your Apple TV is an exit node, so it has a route on it that is like default route, and then you want to then chain traffic through that Apple TV to another exit node. You can do this on an operating system that you have the route table access to, no problem, right? But you don't have that sort of level of access to an Apple TV. So this is likely never going to work. I'm not going to say it's an Apple limitation. It's like a
Hmm.
sandboxed environment limitation. Like if you are using something like an iPhone or even an Android phone or an Apple TV, you can't just exit node through an exit node, right? Like it's not ever going to work, unfortunately. What you can do is you can disable the exit node feature from the Tailscale admin console, and so you can turn it off, I believe. And then you can enable the exit node from there. But you're not going to be able to chain exit nodes in the way that I think you want to, unfortunately. What is your favorite self-hosted solution or
Ooh.
service, Raj? That's a good one. I'm gonna let you go first.
Mine is actually Frigate. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, but it basically can ingest your camera streams, apply some AI to it, and kind of give you a big little view on all your cameras and who drops some
Love it.
mail off. Frigate. Awesome.
I love it. Yeah.
What's yours?
I actually don't self-host a lot of stuff.
No
I
way.
used to do a lot of self-hosting, but I don't self-host a lot of stuff nowadays. I found that as I got further into my career, the amount of time that I want to spend tinkering with technology in my house after work has plummeted over time. So I actually don't self-host a whole bunch of stuff. I used to run my own Raspberry Pi and like AdBlock, and I moved it all to Control D because I wanted a hosted
Hmm.
service. And I used to host my own Plex server, and now I just stream everything because I'm lazy and I don't want to deal with uptime. I also found that I was like doing everything with like an enterprise high availability thing. So I have a NAS down
Hmm.
here that I literally don't turn on anymore.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, I'm actually not a big self-hoster, which is kind of embarrassing, but well, not really, but just a different perspective. I used to have some home automation stuff um like for like the doorbell cameras and stuff like that, but I've gone full
Hmm.
Unify and I'm like everything's Unify.
Unify
S-
is amazing. I
Yes.
actually love it.
Actually, I guess in that case, the Unify controller is the one thing that I run inside my house because I love that thing. Like the Unify network controller and the PVR and
Hmm.
stuff. That is the thing that I self-host with like a little box. But I love that stuff.
That's cool. Most of them now like have it built in.
Yes,
I
yeah,
don't.
I found that. Yeah, everyone's going cloud, right? Like it is does
Yeah.
seem to be the way we're going. Any plan to support other VPN providers such as private internet access for exit nodes in the near future? No plans, I'm afraid. We're driven by our demand. So if you all get together and open a whole bunch of not don't open support tickets, ignore me. If you open a GitHub issue and then everybody upvotes it and says that they're willing to pay for it, we'll build it. But until then, probably not, unfortunately.
As a workaround, Lee, couldn't you install, private internet access on an exit node and potentially self-host your own, kind of connection that way?
Yes. Yeah, I've seen people do it with there's a thing called Gluton, which will allow you to connect two ton
Hmm.
devices together, and so that you can run private internet access and then Tailscale on the same device, and then pin the two ton devices together.
Yeah.
Again, that's very much advanced networking mode. Not everybody really wants to do that, I would suspect, but
Hmm.
I don't really see there's an easy way to do it.
Right.
And this is actually kind of similar to the Apple exit node problem, right? Like if you're running an exit node and then you want to use an exit node, it's probably going to be pretty hard. But Gluton is the thing that supports that. I mean, again, like Movad has been a great partner to us, and that's part of the reason why we choose them.
Hmm.
They're an excellent partner to us, and they've been really, really great in terms of their customer support and all that kind of stuff. But again, we're driven by user demand. I hope that's really coming across clearly here. Like user demand and customer demand, if there's a GitHub issue, go and upvote it. If there is our community Reddit forum, upvote it, comment on these things. We're driven by we can't build everything that you folks want, and so we need to have some groundswell on like which things are going to be popular or not. So that would be the way to kind of get the product team's attention.
I did see
Uh,
someone asked question about battery life on iOS. I'd be interested in what you're experiencing, Lee, because I kind of have Tailscale running all the time on my iPhone or whatever, and I don't really run into any other battery issues.
Well, I have a different problem, Raj.
Hmm.
I dropped my phone in a swimming pool, and my battery life has been terrible ever since. So I just don't notice. Like,
Oh God.
my phone overheats all the time, and I haven't had time to take it into the Apple Care yet because I live 2 hours north of a big metropolitan city. So my battery life's terrible all the time. So I don't know if it's Tailscale or if it's because I threw it in a swimming pool. But I have Tailscale basically on all the time. And I didn't notice any noticeable difference when Tailscale is on or off. But I do know that we have plans in this space for improving not only improving generally the client back like the Tailscale Demon battery life, but
Mhm.
also improving that across all of our devices. Why? Well, as we already mentioned earlier on in the stream, the plan for us, or like the groundswell for us is towards an IoT use case and a machine-to-machine use case, right? Like we're seeing a lot of customers who want to run device Tailscale on increasingly low-powered devices and in some really, really interesting and unique situations. And the Go client is generally pretty good around battery life, but when you are running Tailscale off a 12-volt battery, you need different power requirements and different power draw requirements. Now, there's a lot of things in the Tailscale D daemon that you don't necessarily need for an IoT use case. You might not need SSH. You probably don't
Mhm.
need tail drop. You probably don't need tail drive. Like all of these kind of like ubiquitous features that are built into the client aren't necessarily important. So there are plans in this space for us to be able to build like a low powered version of Tailscale, which I'm excited about. And then that will likely become the benchmark for us to improve battery life on mobile devices and all that kind of stuff.
Great. I do see another question here. Is there an exit node failover feature? If one exit node goes down, uh, does the client fail over to the next one?
Not right now. However, the foundational tooling is kind of there, and we have it in our subnet routers, which is it's called regional routing, and it's an enterprise feature. But if you enable regional routing, two subnet routers that are advertising the same route will like automatically fail over if a
Hmm.
one of the nodes goes offline. So the we can do that for an internal subnet. We can't currently do that for an exit node. We haven't had a lot of requests for this. So again, if you have like a use case that you think would be useful in an exit node, if it's just high availability and you want to, it gives you the peace of mind before using Tailscale, then please let us know. Again, sales at tailscale.com or se@tailscale.com. I did see somebody ask if Alex was not here because he had a bad hair day, and I don't think I've ever seen Alex had a bad hair day, so I just refuse to believe it. No, Alex is taking some well-earned rest. He's cranking out YouTube videos and doing webinars all day and every day, and I think he deserves some PTO and a vacation. So he's taking some well-earned rest. So he will be back in the future, and hopefully Raj and I are doing a good enough job of keeping this going in his stead. Okay, a lot of these questions I don't know the answer to, so I'm just going to ignore them. Let me see if I can read some of these. Oh, so there's a question here. Bridge broker for regular WireGuard connections in your data center. Allow us to add devices that don't support Tailscale to the tailnet. We do have one of our incredible engineers actually built, there's a branch in the Tailscale client that will allow you to sort of do this, right? There's no plans for us to productize it right now because we just don't, again, we don't get a lot of requests for this. It's not something that comes up that often.
Hmm.
So there are no plans to do that right now. If you have a use case in mind that would mean that this would be important, like we want to hear about it. Whether that's through Discord or Reddit or something along those lines, please let us know. But we have no plans for this in this space. I can't really think of any real reasons why we would do this right away because opening up other WireGuard servers into your tailnet seems like something that we'd need to think very, very carefully about.
Right.
Um, Tailscale and IP cameras. You run a bunch of cameras at home. It says could be interesting. Raj, you want to talk a little bit about why we can't do Tailscale and IP cameras right now, and then about some of the different things you can do instead?
Uh, So I don't know exactly why we can't do them on the tailnet, but I do have the couple of the solutions that,
Well,
we've
the
kind of
reason we
brought
can't is
together.
because you probably don't have operating system access to install Tailscale on the IP camera, right? Like if
Right.
the IP camera has a shell on it, you can install Tailscale, right? And if the
Hmm.
manufacturer wants to be a partner to us, you can install Tailscale. An IP camera is just a little, usually low-powered CPU ARM device, and so there's no technical limitation for us running Tailscale directly on the camera, other than the manufacturer doesn't want you to. Kind
Right.
of is the real reason. But yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about what some of the other solutions are.
Yeah, what I've seen is, either running a subnet router somewhere in the same network that your cameras are is a way to kind of ingest that IP camera traffic. Another thing I've seen is installing it directly on like your NVR device,
Hmm.
capturing the streams and then, outputting the web. I think they kind of distribute RSTP kind of web streams. You can ingest them that way, or use something like Frigate, like what I was saying before, kind of to ingest and then display as a web page. So you do have a couple of options there.
Indeed. Okay, well, let's try and get this wrapped up because I'm in the queue for FIFA World Cup tickets and I am 5 minutes
Oh,
out. So
oh God.
we're gonna end this a little bit early. But last question for you, Raj, on a personal level, what are you most excited about doing in the next couple of months at Tailscale?
Uh, I'm going on to a couple really great events. I think the first one I'm doing is Falcon, then GitHub Universe, and then I'm also doing a webinar on AWS. I think coming up in 2 weeks here, and that'll be on Kubernetes and utilizing the operator. And I'm going to be showcasing a really cool demo of kind of building your own chat GPT and then um, running a bunch of inference clusters in somewhere else in AWS or another cloud provider, and then using Tailscale to kind of bridge your front end to your back end inference. So
Yeah,
that sounds
I was going to
interesting.
say the exact same thing. I have a whole bunch of conferences coming up. I think I'm going to see you at GitHub Universe. We're going to KubeCon. I'm going to KubeCon
KubeCon,
in
yes.
Atlanta. And then we have our company offsite in Cancun, which is very exciting. And then I think those are the big ones. Oh, and I'm going to All Things Open in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then Lead
Oh,
Dev in New York. So a whole bunch of travel
lead
coming up for
dev.
me. It's definitely conference season. Definitely a lot of travel coming up. But if you're going to any of these conferences, we would love to see you in person. We usually have a booth and we usually, love people coming. We have great swag and all that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
please drop by. The other things, I already plugged it at the start, but I'm going to plug it again. Our wonderful community manager, Natasha, and our wonderful support aficionado, Arissa, have worked really hard to get a Discord channel up and running, and I am absolutely blown away by how
Hmm.
many people are in there and how active it is and how helpful it is. So if we didn't get to your question today, go and join the Discord and ask the question because I guarantee you there's people in that channel that know the answer to your question. I have been absolutely blown away by the knowledge and the helpfulness of the community that has been built there. We also have Reddit as well, which people are generally pretty good at answering.
Yep.
But it's been incredible to see the Discord take off. So if you aren't in the Discord already, please join. Introduce yourself in the intros channel. Tell us that you heard about it on Lee and Raj's Ask an Expert, and we'll see you there. Um, we're gonna finish this 5 minutes early because I'm gonna go try and buy World Cup tickets.
Sure.
I'm not even gonna be embarrassed about it, right? Like, it's the biggest event on the sporting calendar for me, so
Hmm.
I'm gonna go handle that.
Good
Excellent. So
luck.
we're gonna end it a couple minutes early. Really appreciate everybody joining us today. Everybody tuning in. We'll have another one of these next month, I believe. And as Raj already said, we've got a lot of amazing webinars that are coming up where we can talk about use cases and things that are exciting to actually use Tailscale for. With that, let's end it a little bit early. And thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks, guys. That's awesome.